Solo Leveling by Chu Gong. Chapter 52 Part 2 The King of Giants. A deafening silence had settled in the operation room of the Hunters Association of Japan. All those present seemed to have forgotten how to breathe, their attention focused on the huge monitor mounted at the front. Every so often, the sound of someone swallowing nervously broke the quiet. The screen displayed a satellite feed of Shinjuku, as seen through a mana-detecting camera. Magic power appeared as blips of light on the map, and the stronger the magic power, the bigger the light. Everyone in the room knew what the huge light in the middle of Tokyo represented, but they were all shocked to see the 1,000 or so smaller lights gathered in front of it. Are all of those Hunter Sums minions? Dear Lord, there are easily more than 500. No! President Matsumoto quietly leaned toward the analyst sitting next to him. How many minions are there? We don't have an exact count because many of the dots overlap, but our estimate is well over 800. Well over 800 meant 800 at the very least. That was more than double the number of minions Jin Woo had utilized on Jeju Island. President Matsumoto was gobsmacked. He doubled their number in that short a time? Heck, being able to increase one's minions at all was unheard of in and of itself. He slid a trembling hand down his face. If Jin Woo had been the enemy, it would have been a lost cause, so it was a relief to call him an ally. President Matsumoto was thankful for the mercy the hunter had shown Japan. Barely over the shock, he returned his attention to the screen. The smaller points of light converged on the bigger one. The battle between Jin Woo's minions and the giant guarding the gate was about to go down. With sweaty palms, everyone nervously watched the lights continuously tangling with one another until finally, the large blip of light dimmed and disappeared. Yeah! They erupted in cheers loud enough to shake the whole room. People laughed and cried as they exchanged hugs. The Japanese archipelago was free from the terror of the giants. And the person to thank was a hunter from Korea. President Matsumoto stared at the screen in silence and then nodded. When Jin Woo had ruined his plans, he resented the heavens for giving this great hunter to Korea instead of Japan. But now, he was thankful Jin Woo had been on the Korean side of events. If it wasn't for him, Japan would be. He shuddered at the thought, then picked up his phone to perform one of his final acts as the president of the association. The call went through immediately. How did it go? The Prime Minister's nervous voice came from the other end. President Matsumoto was a little choked up, but able to relay the news in an official tone. Japan is safe. Loud cheers could be heard over the phone. The Prime Minister managed to subdue himself to continue their conversation. Good work, President Matsumoto. However, do not expect this to lessen the things you must answer for. Of course not, sir. President Matsumoto was already prepared for this. A general who failed to kill the enemy's general was expected to offer his own neck. And if the same enemy's general saved their country? President Matsumoto had no excuse in the face of a complete defeat. He spoke quietly. I shall take any punishment. That is, the last thing I must do as president. The news that the giants had been eliminated instantly spread around the world. From the neighboring country of Korea to Brazil, the nation located on the opposite side of the planet. The whole world heard about Jin Woo's achievement. A single hunter saves a whole nation. Social media was abuzz about the possibility of a new national-level hunter. Koreans had been the only ones who cared about Jeju Island, but this time, the whole world had their eyes on him. In Maryland, USA, the American hunters had safely completed the S-Rank Gate raid and were on their way to attend a party hosted by the government. But a TV monitor in the hotel lobby caught their attention. The hunters stopped to watch the coverage from Japan, and their jaws dropped. What? But that doesn't make sense. It defied logic. Yuri Orlov, the most famous support-type hunter in the world, had been killed in the blink of an eye. The boss giant's movements had been captured on camera during that incident. Monster was barely an apt word for something of that speed and size. But a lone S-rank hunter had gotten rid of that fearsome creature? Hunter Jin Woo-sung and his companion, D-rank hunter Jin Ho-yu, arrived in Japan earlier that same day and... Actually, it would have been better if Jin Woo had gone in alone. But he got the job done with a D-rank hunter to protect. It was hard to believe. But the footage of teary Japanese people expressing their delight showed that it had to be true to some extent. The news then switched over to coverage of a massive giant lying lifeless on the ground. Ack! The three S-rank hunters simultaneously exclaimed. The reality finally started to hit them. There you guys are! The three hunters turned toward the voice, and their eyes went wide. Thomas! Thomas Andre grinned and waved a piece of paper at them. What's that? A contract stating that you accept the results. What? Thomas ignored their confusion and began jotting down the list of items they carelessly bet. You bet your yacht, and you bet your house, and you... He stared at the third hunter and scratched his head with the end of the pen. What did you bet again? The man swallowed hard and quickly clarified. I didn't bet anything. Hey, that's a pretty nice tie. But I didn't. The tie. No, I said I. Thomas pushed down the sunglasses he was wearing and gave the third hunter a look that rendered him speechless. Having just witnessed another S-rank take down a Goliath of a magic beast on his own, the third hunter didn't want to offend a man who went around casually raiding S-rank dungeons. My necktie. With tears in his eyes, the man removed his tie. A little later, Thomas hummed as he walked into the dining hall. He stopped when he spotted Laura, the manager of the top-rank hunters and scavenger guild. Thomas showed off the tie as she approached. How's my tie? It looks expensive, but it doesn't go with your Hawaiian shirt. Really? Thomas took it off and stuffed it in a nearby garbage can. Yeah, I didn't think so either. Laura was used to Thomas's eccentricities, so she jumped into the issue at hand without missing a beat. We have a problem. A problem? Thomas looked up. Based on his experience, if Laura deigned to make a personal appearance rather than discuss the matter over the phone, it was a big deal. What problem? Laura anxiously explained. They've announced the list of guilds invited to the International Guild Conference, and it includes the Ajin Guild from Korea. Ajin Guild? Thomas had a bad feeling about this. His voice turned serious. Laura nodded. Yes, that's the guild Hunter Sung recently established. And there it was. Thomas groaned. So he's coming to America. At a village in Ishikawa Prefecture, the town's entrance was crowded despite the early hour. What's going on? Why is everyone out here? A clueless man asked his neighbors. The village was supposed to be in the middle of restorations, but people were milling around instead of working. He'd been diligently hauling away wreckage from the destroyed buildings, so he was unnerved to see his fellow villagers acting this way. The thing is, a friendly woman started to explain, but became distracted by the sight of an approaching vehicle. Oh my! He's coming! He's here! The crowd went wild, as if eager to welcome a long-lost relative home. But there's no way it's that. Curious, the man used a towel to wipe sweat off his neck. Can anyone tell me who's coming? An older man seemed exasperated by his question. They say the hunter is coming. The hunter? Which hunter? Who else would it be? The villagers frantically waved their hands as the car drew near. Their expressions beamed with sincere joy and gratitude. Wait. The man finally realized who they were all talking about and instinctively glanced over his shoulder. He took in the miserable reality of the half-destroyed village with idle tools and machines strewn everywhere. Had nobody stopped the giant, their village would have been wiped off the face of the earth. The schools he'd attended, the roads he'd traveled, the places where he'd worked his ass off, the hometown that elicited so many precious memories would have disappeared without a trace. His heart ached at the mere thought of it, and his eyes stung with unshed tears. Is he really coming here? He turned his head back toward the road. The villagers hadn't been prompted to gather by their leaders to put on a show. They had done so on their own, motivated by their overflowing appreciation. The man was swept up in the mood soon enough, and he cheered loudly while swinging his towel around. Oh! Though the expensive black van coming down the empty street was new, the caked-on dirt made it look at least 10 years old. The Hunters Association of Japan stamp embossed on the license plate was hard to make out. The condition of the vehicle told the story of a battle, and the sight touched the villagers even more. The most emotional of them were in tears. Soon, the van came to a smooth stop. Yay! Mr. Hunter! Jinho, sporting sunglasses, exited from the driver's seat to an enthusiastic welcome by the crowd. Jinho waved at every single villager. Mr. Hunter! An employee of the Hunters Association of Japan had been waiting for them. He was barely able to push through the throng to get to Jinho. Huffing and puffing, he finally pulled it together enough to ask, "Are you Hunter Jinwoo-sung?" The employee spoke Japanese, but luckily Jinho understood a few words. "No." Jinho shook his head and pointed at the sky. "There." Kree. Kaisel the winged dragon let out a joyful roar. What the heck is that? Huh? Just like the saying once bitten, twice shy, the creature flying overhead made the villagers, who had been living in fear of the giants for some time, quiver where they stood. However, Kaisel merely continued circling above them. Kree. Once the people realized that Kaisel meant no harm, they stared at the dragon with both wonder and trepidation. Just then, a shadowy human figure leaped from Kaisel's back. Thud. The villagers gaped in awe as Jinwoo cushioned his landing with ruler's authority. The association employee, who was closest to Jinwoo, could only stare while holding his glasses. Jinho spoke to Jinwoo on his behalf. "Boss, this man was asking for you." "Really?" Jinwoo approached the employee. The fellow snapped back to his senses as soon as Jinwoo stopped in front of him. He had been instructed not to falter in the presence of this most important hunter. He bowed solemnly, just barely able to think straight. "Nice to meet you, Hunter-sung. I am Hiroshi Tanaka from the Hunters Association of Japan, Kanazawa branch." He raised his head. "I have been assigned to be your guide for today. I'm at your service." Of course, Hiroshi said everything in Japanese. Jinwoo looked at Jinho. Jinho looked back at Jinwoo. Jinho's carefree smile made it clear he had no intention of trying to piece together what the employee had said. Jinwoo let out a big sigh and summoned a shadow soldier who could interpret for them. "My liege." Baru emerged and bowed to Jinwoo. He then turned to the employee. "I shall take care of this man." "Wait, you realize that can have a totally different meaning." Jinwoo wasn't the only one with reservations. Hiroshi and the villagers were stunned. "Human." Baru rolled back his shoulders and approached Hiroshi. "What would you like to tell my king?" The villagers witnessing this scene squawked in astonishment. This was also Jinho's first time seeing a shadow soldier make conversation. Surprised, he turned to Jinwoo. "Boss, he can talk?" "Yeah." Baru's voice resonated like a beast's roar, but he spoke fluent Japanese. I mean, this made sense, considering how most of the humans Baru had consumed had been Japanese. Jinwoo could feel a headache coming at the very thought. Baru turned back to him after speaking to the employee. My king, this man will be your guide in this village and will serve you with sincerity. But what did you say to him to make him look so pale? I told him that if he made one false move, I would eat him whole. I see. What did it matter? As long as they understood each other. Hiroshi was clearly painfully conscious of the ant who had taken his position behind Jinwoo. Please come this way. Jinwoo nodded, feeling sorry for him. The man looked like he'd seen a ghost. Okay. Hiroshi led their group to a deserted storage unit located deeper within the village. One of the walls had been destroyed, and a dead giant lay inside on its back. It's right here. Hiroshi gestured to the corpse and stepped aside. Jinwoo walked up to the remains. Traces of a fierce battle remained on the magic beast's dead body, including bite marks and bits of torn flesh. You guys ate this, didn't you? Jinwoo's eyes narrowed as he turned to interrogate Baru. The ant was already bent at the waist in a deep, apologetic bow. The pair reminded Jinho of a company manager bowing to a department head. Jinwoo looked back at the giant. He would have no problem extracting a shadow as long as enough of the carcass remained. It just doesn't feel right. Jinwoo was currently on a quest across Japan to extract the shadows of the giants his shadow army had eliminated. He found that he was able to tell which of his units had battled which giant based on the state of the remains. Others left by the ant army had all been in a similar state. Huh? Jinwoo sighed as he gazed upon the magic beast that had most likely been eaten alive. He then rolled up his sleeves and reached his hand out to the giant. He solemnly uttered, Arise! The villagers who had trailed after them exclaimed in amazement as a giant soldier in perfect condition emerged screaming from the shadow. It went down on one knee in front of Jinwoo. Thud. Jinwoo easily succeeded in extracting his 27th shadow. That leaves 2 more. Jinwoo smiled as he gazed up at the imposing giant. Meanwhile, in South Korea, President Go was flipping through TV channels in his office at the headquarters of the Hunters Association of Korea, remote in hand. Every station featured Jinwoo's performance in Japan, both Korean and worldwide. The name Jinwoo Sung had been imprinted on everyone's brain across the planet. Oh ho! President Go couldn't stop smiling, as if he were the hunter about whom they were speaking. Thank goodness he hadn't prevented Jinwoo from going. That would have been the biggest mistake of his long life. Jinwoo stepping forward to deal with the crisis boosted the reputation of the Korean hunters in the international community. There was even talk of Korea as a new global superpower. Hence President Go's extreme pride and appreciation of Jinwoo's contribution. There was one thing that made him uneasy, however. President Go! As if on cue, Jinchul Woo, the youngest ever department head in the history of the association, knocked on the door before entering. He gave a small bow before issuing his report. The magic beast has changed direction and is headed to China. Really? This was rather unexpected. While Jinwoo was busy taking care of the giants in Japan, one had jumped into the East Ocean. At first, the beast appeared to be heading toward the Pacific, but it had apparently changed course toward China in a strange turn of events. How is China handling it? Jigang Lu will personally deal with the threat. President Go leaned back on the couch. There shouldn't be a problem then. If Jigang, one of the 5 strongest hunters in the world, responded to the situation, the giant would be torn apart before setting foot on Chinese soil. It was a relief to hear he wasn't heading toward Korea during Jinwoo's absence. Jinchul smiled, seeing the relief on President Go's face, but something on the TV screen caught his eye. It was a montage of clips showing the destruction in Japan, the people suffering and screaming, and the rescue and restoration work being done. What a tragedy! Jinchul pursed his lips. Indeed, President Go agreed. They had experienced the same pain with Jeju Island 4 years ago, wounds too deep to be forgotten, especially with the reconstruction work still ongoing. But one person's pain could become another person's hope. Pardon me, sir? Do you know how Japan became the second richest country after losing World War II and becoming financially ruined? Because of the Korean War, right? That's right. It was an economic benefit of a war. A similar thing is about to happen in Korea. With a bitter look on his face, President Go put his hand on top of a pile of documents. These are quotes from Korean companies that want to help rebuild and restore Japan. Korean companies had been quick to make their moves. Some had submitted their bids as soon as Jinwoo flew to Japan, and most others were already primed to jump into action. Someone's pain can be someone else's hope. More accurately, it would be to their benefit. Jinchul understood exactly what President Go meant, and a similar feeling of resentment gleamed in his eyes. He then remembered something. Oh yes, President Go. Yes, I heard that President Matsumoto from the Hunters Association of Japan turned himself in. He did? Why would such a shameless man have a change of heart? Before President Go could ask for details, his phone rang. Riyang. The voice on the other end sounded urgent. President Go, it's me. It was his primary care physician, but he was normally very busy with patients around this time of the day. What's the matter? I'm calling because I figured this was important. Important? President Go was concerned. Several possible scenarios ran through his mind, but he couldn't have predicted the name his doctor uttered. President Go, are you aware of Chairman Myung-han Yu's condition by any chance? Chairman Yu is one of the biggest supporters of the Hunters Association of Korea and a personal friend of President Go. What in the world could have happened to him? Chairman Yu was admitted to our hospital today. President Go sprang to his feet. Is it an emergency? Unfortunately, there was nothing we could do for him. A heavy silence fell on the room. After a brief pause, the doctor quietly explained, Chairman Yu has reached the final rest stage of the eternal sleep disease. The employees of the Hunters Association of Japan couldn't get any work done because of the barrage of phone calls from broadcasters and journalists wanting to interview Hunter Jinwoo Sung. Riyang, thank you for calling the Hunters Association of Japan. I'm the person who just called earlier. How about a quick Q? An A instead of an interview? Sir, that's still an interview. No, see, we could just put subtitles instead of Hunter Sung's face. I'm sorry, but Hunter Sung refuses to do any broadcasts or interviews. Click. Riyang, thank you for calling the Hunters Association of Japan. I'm the executive producer from XXTV, and I just wanted to ask. I'm sorry, but it's a no. Click. They received hundreds of these calls every day, making it impossible to do other work. The department head got a migraine anytime he heard a phone ring. I guess this shows how focused the media is on Hunter Sung. Who wouldn't be interested in the man who had single-handedly saved Japan after nearly 40% of the country had been decimated? He, too, was curious about what kind of person Jinwoo was and what he had to say. Yet that was neither here nor there. Hunter Sung had made it clear he did not want to do interviews. It was the department head's duty, as an employee of the Hunters Association of Japan, to decline all media requests in accordance with Hunter Sung's wishes. I can't disappoint the savior of our country." The department manager gave a firm nod. Just then, one of the new hires nervously approached him. "Excuse me, sir?" The manager cut him off. "Tell them no." No need to hear him out. Some higher-up from a broadcasting station or a newspaper had probably yelled at the newbie, so he'd come to check with his boss. "That's not it, sir. I think we got a phone call from Korea." "From Korea?" "Gunny Go from the Hunters Association of Korea says he needs to talk to the person in charge." The manager was in a panic now. "Gunny Go, you said?" "Yes, sir." There was no way there was another Gunny Go within the Hunters Association of Korea. The cooperative relationship between Jin Woo and the Hunters Association of Korea was public knowledge. And hadn't it been President Go who had announced Jin Woo's intentions to help Japan? The manager rushed to his desk, yelling, "Connect the call! Right now!" "Yes, sir." "Hello, President Go. I'm the department head." The manager had still had some doubts as he picked up the phone, but he froze at the fluent Japanese coming from the other end of the line. "Yes. Yes. Understood. Yes, I will contact him right away." It didn't matter how many times he watched it. Jinho never got tired of it. Wow! He couldn't repress yet another outburst of admiration. The sight of a huge black creature that had emerged from a giant's dead body, kneeling and pledging loyalty to Jin Woo, was like something out of a movie. It got Jinho every time. "You're so awesome, boss." Jinho's eyes shone with respect for Jin Woo as he heard exclamations coming from behind them. "Whoa! How is that possible? What the heck is that?" Considering how Jinho still wasn't used to the shadow extraction process despite having seen it many times before, it was no wonder the villagers were aghast. Although he didn't understand Japanese, he could guess what they were saying. Pride swelled inside him, as if he was the subject of their conversation. Ahem. An employee from the Hunters Association of Japan interrupted his train of thought. "Are you Mr. Hunter by any chance?" "Oh, if you're looking for my boss, he's over there." Jinho pointed at Jin Woo, assuming he was the hunter for whom the man was looking. But the employee shook his head, pointed right at Jinho, and switched to English. "No, no. You?" Jinho blinked in surprise. "Me? Yes." Perplexed after the exchange in broken English, Jinho accepted the cell. Phone handed to him. As he listened to the person on the other side, his expression turned grim, and he kept repeating, "Yes," until he hung up. Jin Woo exited the ruined storage unit after stowing the giant shadow soldier, and Jinho immediately hurried over and hung his head. "I'm sorry, boss, but I think I need to head back to Korea." Jin Woo noted the serious look on his face. "Something wrong?" "I'm not sure. I was just told to return to Korea for a family matter." Jin Woo kept his mouth shut, but he had an inkling. Chairman used disease. If that was the reason, Jin Woo understood why the person calling hadn't gone into detail over the phone. How do you explain to a child currently in a different country that his father has fallen into a coma? Jin Woo didn't ask any further questions. "I understand. Thanks for your help." "No, it was nothing. I'm sorry I can't stay with you until the end." Jinho apologized one more time before he got in the car sent by the Hunters Association of Japan and headed to the airport. Wordlessly, Jin Woo watched the car drive away. Jinho had tried to appear calm in front of Jin Woo, but he was unable to hide his anxiety. This was the first time he'd ever heard his mother's normally gentle and warm voice shaking. What's going on? Jinho's heart raced. Was his father angry he had followed Jin Woo to Japan without his permission? What parent would approve of their child walking into the jaws of death? In a daze, He looked out the window of the moving car, then shook his head to try and snap out of it. No, don't think about it now. He would only give himself a headache worrying about maybes. It could all turn out to be nothing. Jinho clung to that thought until his plane landed at Incheon Airport. Jinho! Mr. Kim, Chairman Yu's secretary, was there to pick him up. Seeing the older man's red eyes, Jinho knew at once something big had happened. Mr. Kim, the car is waiting for you. Please come with me. What's going on? Jinho was dying to ask, but couldn't bring himself to for fear of the answer. Let's hurry. Secretary Kim directed him toward the exit. Oh, but somehow, Jinho couldn't move his legs. Secretary Kim placed a hand on Jinho's shoulder, as if he sympathized, his face betraying his mixed feelings. Jinho, you must stay strong at a time like this. I'll explain everything on the way. Tears welled in Jinho's eyes, and as promised, Secretary Kim explained Chairman Yu's status while they drove. Jinho went into denial. There was no way Secretary Kim was telling the truth. However, he had no choice but to accept it once he saw his father asleep through the glass partition in the hospital. He had always envisioned his father as a strong man, and his heart broke at the sight of his frail body lying on the bed. Father! The doctors blocked Jinho from bursting into the hospital room. His father's condition would get worse if a hunter who couldn't control magic got too close to him. His expression crumbled as he listened. I see. As a son, Jinho had always been a disappointment to his father, but he never imagined he wouldn't even get to hold his hand in his final moments. Just one more way he'd let his father down. Looks like I'm a useless son until the end. Despondent, Jinho turned away from his father and found Secretary Kim standing there with a black leather portfolio. What's this? Jinho took it, and Secretary Kim explained. It's something Chairman Yu was working on right before he collapsed. I was keeping it with me in case he asks for it when he wakes up, but I think you need it more, Jinho. Me? Jinho glanced between Secretary Kim and the portfolio before slowly opening it. There were newspaper clippings about his older brother, Jin Sung, and older sister, Jin Hee, organized like a scrapbook. Like father, like son. Jinho had always wondered where his scrapbooking inclination had come from, but it seemed to have originated with his father. I didn't know father had this kind of hobby. He couldn't help but smile at the childhood pictures of his siblings. His brother and sister were his father's pride. From academic competitions to contests to performances, his siblings were well-known geniuses in their respective fields. Naturally, the scrapbook was filled with articles about the two of them. Jinho was embarrassed there wasn't a single picture of him, but then he flipped to the last page and paused. Who is Jinho Yu, vice president of a Jin guild? The two hunters heading to Japan. The D-rank hunter's decision, brave or reckless? They were all articles about Jinho. Even gossip columns and small press articles had been clipped and neatly preserved. Oh! Jinho was speechless. Then, a newspaper clipping that wasn't completely cut out fluttered to the ground. Crying, Jinho quickly bent over and picked it up. The article featured a picture of Jinho smiling brightly for the cameras that had rushed to the scene after the fall of the boss giant in place of Jin Woo, who had refused to have his photo taken. The article bore today's date. Secretary Kim put his hand on Jinho's shoulder. It wasn't like Chairman Yu didn't love you, Jinho. It's just that his expectations for you were as big as his love. Jinho quietly sobbed for a long while. As soon as he was able to compose himself, he stood up. Is there any way to wake him up? Secretary Kim solemnly shook his head. No patient had ever awoken after entering the final rest stage, except one. As soon as Secretary Kim recalled who, he hesitantly tried to bring it up. By any chance, Jinho? Yes. It's nothing. Never mind. He couldn't bring himself to ask. Sometimes, it was crueler to give someone hope. So Secretary Kim swallowed the question he desperately wanted to ask the crying hunter. All the while, Jinho's shadow quietly eavesdropped on their conversation.